This has been a strange year. I get it, a remaster for an ancient game about a little gray alien, anal probing hippies in the 60s feels like it's already got all the cards against it in today's day and age. Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed is a total remaster of the original game. It's handled by Black Forest Games and published by THQ Nordic. This is, again, a full graphical remake with some adjustments here and there for control and accessibility. But is that enough to get gamers interested in an older title? We're going to see. Thanks to the dev for a copy. As you guys know, I buy a copy of every single game or hardware I review, and I give that away to people who comment, subscribe, or are part of the Patreon. So do so. Stay tuned for more reviews from me this week, as well as some exclusive previews. Let's talk about Destroy All Humans 2. So this is set in 1969. It's 10 years after Destroy All Humans, the original game. This game opens with a Soviet KGB slideshow. All these ancient Russian men are sitting there watching the mysterious death of the original game's protagonist, Crypto 137. He's been replaced by his clone, Crypto 138. Crypto for short, who's composed of more pure Furon DNA. But more importantly, 138 has balls. Literally, the KGB finds out he has nuts and decides that aliens able to breed can't be allowed to live, so they nuke the mothership. That sets Crypto out on a revenge UFO hopscotching between locations adventure from the United States San Francisco ripoff to Europe to China and elsewhere. Some interesting places, in fact. Each location has a series of missions and submissions where Crypto uses his growing assortment of weapons, DNA that he's tractor beamed into a ship to upgrade them, as well as his ability to disguise himself as a human to get in there and take over these different groups and figure out what's going on and release some alien vengeance. The best part about the game right away is that the missions and the submissions really never ever stay past their welcome. The side missions are short and sweet, and the main missions never become ungainly, though a couple have longer battles or chapters to them and can get a little bit difficult in the later stages. But Crypto controls very well for such an old game. It still feels a bit creaky, but it has definitely stepped up. Controller or mouse and keyboard, you have the ability to leap into the UFO, hoverboard to blast around the city streets, as well as a jetpack to leap onto buildings or get out of trouble quick, and both those can also be upgraded. But the best part about the game is the delivery. It's always nailed perfectly in the time frame, from the paranoia of the 1960s and free love hippies and one-liners you consistently hear as you move against them, to the monsters that the enemies start to unleash on you as they themselves begin to experiment with alien technology. Each time it's somewhat reflecting some creature from the B movies as well, and each main mission ends with a hastily written newspaper article blaming everything from bridges burning down to cave networks collapsing on random elements, always pointing away from the alien menace, a little bit like Roswell. Games like this have to offer those good missions, tight gameplay, and a unique story. And the original game did that, but the update with better graphics absolutely helps, and I'll cover that in a moment in the presentation. I do want to talk about the AI. It's absolutely dead from the neck up and hasn't seen any real adjustments. For example, you can just run away from a lot of the enemies that see you take over another person, and they'll forget it was you in a short amount of time. There are enemies that will chase you down, though. But it's how each city is just this little pocket of atmosphere that lets you go back and forth and revisit them for collections. Another thing I really like, but I won't spoil it, is that the game does have some awesome twists and turns. Makes it feel a little bit larger and more interesting than the original game did. It makes sense as a sequel, but it's awesome to see because even though the game isn't super long, that slight switch up means it's always got you facing something new, and you never really feel like you've seen just about everything until right at the end. And the upgrading cycle and the way you do the missions works just right. Whether you're in the UFO sucking up humans so you can mash them up, turn them into upgrades, or you're just going about the main missions, or just walking through some of the cities, there is a lot to actually be seen here. While mission variety isn't some magical mix of a ton of options, it does have you diving into the body of some hippie chick, using her getaway sticks to escape a policeman who is investigating some poor chap's yells of terror as you use your anal probe on him in a back alley, or sneaking into an enemy complex as a military man, then making them all dance with your love ray, dropping explosive vans into the ocean to stop nukes, or using telekinesis to launch a businessman into the stratosphere as he got ready to call the police. When it comes to bugs, I also only ran into one, which feels completely alien in this day and age. In one mission in the Bay Area, I couldn't get the side mission to complete. Now, this is a side mission, not a main mission, and the only mission I could see that was giving me any problems. It's one where you need to save a guru from the cops, and the cops just wouldn't count as kills. The game also has multiplayer, local 2-player split screen, and co-op on the console. This drops the FPS on the console from 60s target to around 30s, so be aware of that. As a 3D action shooter, the game's always offering you just a little bit more, whether it's an upgrade to turn on rapid fire or something that changes your surf skateboard holodeck thingy into something that blasts you into the air. There's always something, and it may not be huge, but it's just enough to keep you going and keeping that cycle fresh. I really did like that part. When it comes to the presentation, though, there's more to like. Destroy All Humans is a massive step up in the graphics, not only from the original game, but even the remaster for number 1. Most of the time, it looks phenomenal and shows that regardless of what people want you to think, looks do matter. From the color work, the way everything's designed, to the weird Genesis Land of Confusion kind of characterization that all of the different characters in the game world depict. The game's image quality is pretty much rock solid, and changing out into the 20+ skins that Crypto has actually feels like a true reward. Each one of these skins offers some cool little design element that you notice, like little glyphs on the fake Elvis costume or the reflections and evil in the clown eyes of the clown suit, even all the way back to the more classic gray alien look of the original design. The weapons in their updates are the same way. Each one offers a bit of flavor, like the anal probe, and its first update being a sniffometer that helps it aim. A little bit gross, but it's still awesome, and I get it. It's 12-year-old humor, but the game never shies away from that. It aims right at it for everything, from the sound, the music, the voice, and the graphics. Option-wise for graphics, the game has a number of them. Frame rate locks, distance, anti-aliasing, post-processing, which also seems to include the chromatic aberration. Then you have shadow quality, texture, visual effects. These are all as a whole, so when you turn that one up or down, it changes more than just one particular setting, so keep an eye on that. You also have foliage that you can turn up or down, landscape tessellation, as well as DLSS and AMD's FSR. While all those explain themselves, landscape tessellation is actually handled insanely well here. It offers depth in locations with texture work that looks like a massive step up from the original, whether it be the roads or just different rock formations that you see, or even the buildings themselves. When it comes to performance, it is exactly where you would probably expect this to be. 4K on Ultra 3080 is doable for the most part in native, but use an FSR, which is AMD's version, of course, of image upscaling, or DLSS is probably required to keep that solid, especially in the later locations where they have a lot of weather effects, including fog. If you don't want to, you can set some of those settings a little bit lower, and it won't really impact your look of the game. On the 1080 Ti, 1080p worked perfectly, and some of the time it was well above 60 FPS, 1440p as well. It just depends on your exact settings. But I didn't really have any issues with consistent FPS problems. I did have two overall issues I want to talk about, and that's one that is pop-in and stutter. When it comes to pop-in, this is noticeable in the UFO, especially, and in many of the extreme distance locations, and it's really not very pretty. Also, the game has a very close detail pop you can see regardless of your setting that looks like it's in some way also connected to the filtering. It's noticeable on the ground, and it's only a couple feet in front of the character. I would love to see them blend this better, as it's easy to ignore during fights and running around, but if you're just wanting to explore, it can actually become noticeable. Stuttering during mission starts does happen randomly, and also seems to be an issue that pops up more if you have just changed a skin on the UFO or Crypto himself. It also stabilizes just a couple seconds after that, but you may notice this, and I ran it on a PCI 4 NVMe. Despite those two issues, the incredibly clear picture and the design work that you see here is phenomenal. I love the look of everything, and it really does depend on the atmosphere, especially a game like this, which is trying to lend that atmosphere of 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, as well as mix in B-movies. It works perfectly, and I gotta say, this game looks beautiful. Also, I have to point out, yes, there are some plans for a patch later on, but unlike titles like, say, Saints Row, where they're almost required, here it would probably just be to smooth out a couple bits of those roughness, and maybe some of that filtering and LOD pop that we see.
And then I kick a little monkey ass.
Our B-City brain farm will be turned into a useless den of unmotivated degenerates sitting in front of their TV screens, twiddling their thumbs.
Please, Secret base underground. Well, that shouldn't be too tough. Just scan the city while we were flying in.
When it comes to the presentation of the audio, the sound, Destroy All Humans has always been based in that old style B-movie, Mars Attack sound styles of the 60s through the 80s. The game delivers that for every single weapon, from the pop of an anal probe late night party surprise on some poor lady just sitting in a hippie tent, to the massive electric bolt throwing electricity gun. This not only cracks out with a thunderclap, but elicits a stuttering jabbering from the targets it hits. And that's continued right in when you leap into the UFO, unleashing torrents of quantum fire, or the old style warble of the abducto rays. You suck up humans to blend them into separate DNA parts to upgrade everything. It's excellent. It's got good tonal changes in the locations, a lot of 3D effects, and noticeably good channeling in the super busy battles, and distance effects that are actually rock solid. When it comes to the music, this is another place where this game excels. It's very Bondish, very style B kind of movie, as I said before, with a lot of tracks with brass, bombastic stylings. This has a hint of patriotism in a lot of the themes, and I really did like it. But you also have that eerie entry and jiggly synth of old horror movies mixed in, and it's awesome. Somehow they got it all to work. I will say I have one criticism here. The cutscenes and the music, especially in the first two levels, it's a bit loud, and since it's more layered and ambient, it can actually make some of those boss battles, including the very first one, a bit hard to really parse out musically and when the characters are talking. But that's also where the game excels, is voices. Listen, it's a rip-off Jack Nicholson, pissy alien. He sounds like he's been on the wrong side of at least one late-night YouTube autopsy video. He's always mad, he's horny in equal parts, and it's awesome. The humor is more basic due to that time frame that the gameplay and game was actually originally released in, but it's solid. It's a little bit like No One Lives Forever with an alien. It's poking fun at everything, including stereotypes for secret agents, how they act depending on what nation they're from, and so forth. From the idiotic Russian spies to the foppish British agent in the blue bell-bottoms. It works. I love the voices in the game. Even if they are over the top, this is still excellent. And all of these come together to make a game that is a blast to play. What's scarier than getting anal probed by a small gray alien that sounds like Jack Nicholson? What if it was a clown with a probe? And what if that probe looked like a 12-pound metal football with hooks on it? Probably releasing a game in today's market, where bugs and issues are magnified and explained and roadmapped, where no blemish can even survive without 10 YouTube videos about it. But this game has come out pretty much unscathed. It never takes itself seriously. The absurdity of an alien horde dog going around wanting to sex up Russian spies to wanting to blast his enemies and almost consistently in a pissy mood works. The game's weapons work. The control feels good, and it comes from a different time, and you have to realize that. And sure, you can be bothered by crypto and his propositions and awkward sexual advances, but that's like realizing if you have diarrhea in a threesome, you're a blockchain. It's knowledge, but it's not really surprising or useful. And while this game too isn't surprising, it is awesome. It comes with attitude, and a ton of it. Its presentation, which is for the most part excellent, is really damned sound. It's surprising to get a game like this, especially remake or remastering like this, that comes out looking so fresh. And again, the controls, they feel great. There are some issues here and there with how it feels, and it maybe feels a little bit clunkier compared to some of the other games we've got, and I'm not in love with the UFO controls. But when it comes down to it, as a third-person action shooter with a lot of attitude, the game is a blast to play. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's a buy. It's not like you guys are confused about this. The game is a blast. It's very good. It's well worth the money, and I was consistently surprised the entire way with the step up it has made. It is not perfect. It is not going to magically change the way games are, but it is absolutely a title that if maybe you want to revisit this, or you looked at it and you thought this character looked cool, you might really enjoy it. Yeah, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and sometimes it's actually too much on the nose, but for me, well worth it. What's also well worth it? The Patron. If you guys want to support a channel that buys every single copy of every game it gets, as well as any hardware that I review, check out the Patron. It helps the channel, especially as almost all of my videos are always getting 18 rated or absurdly demonetized. It is a huge help to me if you jump into the Patron. You want to come in, you want to hang out, talk some D&D, talk about movies, TV shows, have an awesome place to talk to awesome people about awesome games, or some crappy ones. That's the place to be. You can also share this video anywhere and everywhere video games are talked about, and even places they're not. Peace out.